the kid made a transition. JJ KSI came in, and he went from a YouTuber to a legitimate fighter. And the kid could pop. The kid can box.
For the millions across the globe watching on OSP TV, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
OSP TV, we are back in action. Episode 10, we hit the double digits. Congratulations, OG.
We made it.
And we have a very special guest on the podcast today. But before we get started, big shout out to the co-host, the navigator, the passenger seat, but the actual driver, the one and only OG Woods.
Thanks, my man.
Good to see you, man.
Long time no see.
What do you got, allergies or something, man?
Allergies, yeah. No COVID.
You sure you don't have that COVID? Johnny, test this boy for COVID. Anyway, our special guest for the number 10 episode. How do you not have an absolute superstar on the OSP TV podcast when we launch episode number 10? He is infamous around the world's most famous cutman, but cutman turned actor, turned celebrity, turned everything else, probably author soon. The one and only, the infamous Stitch Duran. Stitch, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, well, thank you, man. I tell you, when Amir Abdallah calls, I tell Felix Nicholas Stern, the executive producer from Creed 3 that just called me, that I'll call him back because I'm speaking to you. But thanks for having me on and add author to my list. I did write From the Fields to the Garden 1 and 2, which is now being turned into a documentary. So
you are an author.
Yes. I wrote a book. Well, you know, the way it started, Amir, is you're right. Things just happen, right? During the era of the UFC, when Matt Hughes and Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture, all these guys were having books written on them. I had the author for Matt Hughes that asked me if I'd be interested in having a book written. So, you know, I'm the kind of guy, if you want to do it, let's do it, you know, and, but took my wife out to dinner and nothing ever happened, you know. So I get a call from Zach Robinson. He's a teacher in Germany, works with the military kids, and he's an author also. He's written books, Sports by the Numbers. So he contacted me, and once again, I said, sure, let's do it. You know, just happens by the grace of God that I was going to be in Germany 2 weeks later, working with Vitaly Klitschko. And he was in Kaiserslautern, which is like 30 minutes away from where we're at. So we met. You know, he played baseball, I played baseball. He's from Oklahoma. We shook hands, wrote a book, and became a top seller. And Amazon for sports biographies became a top seller. And then I did From the Fields to the Garden 2 after the UFC let me go because people were demanding or asking for, you know, additional stuff. So they're good books, man. And it's called From the Fields to the Garden, of course, available at Amazon. The fields are Amir, because I grew up as a farm worker. You know my lifestyle, and you know, I was born and raised in a migrant camp. So, you know, I started in the trenches, and then the garden is, of course, Madison Square Garden, where I've been there for both boxing and MMA. So, yeah, so I've been real honored.
Oh, wow. Tied it in well. Now, Dustin, longtime MMA fan. I'm recently getting into MMA. You know, I'm a boxing guy, but I'm starting to follow the MMA. And, of course, you know Stitch from the UFC days.
Yep.
That's really where the rise to fame came. And then, Stitch, you did a movie. What was that movie that you did when you were in the UFC, the big one?
Man, I've been in like 6 movies, 7 movies.
Man, what was the first one? The one with the comedian, the fat kid?
The first one I did was Play It to the Bone with Woody Harrelson.
No, not that one.
And then I did Ocean's 11.
Oh, you were in Ocean's 11?
What? Yeah, when Vladimir Klitschko was fighting.
That's right.
Lewis.
Oh, yeah. You were in that one?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was Vladimir Klitschko's cutman. And funny, right after that, you know, Emmanuel Stewart comes up to me, and when he's doing an HBO commentary, we're at the MGM, and he says, Vladimir wants to talk to you about working cuts. And I talked to my partner, Nick Ward, and I said, did you see what I saw? Next day, Emmanuel calls me and says that Vladimir wanted the guy that was a cutman in the movie. So worked with him for 12 years.
Wait a second. So when you were his cutman in the movie, you weren't really his cutman in real life? That happened after?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, so let's go way behind what happened. In 1991, you were a kickboxer also, so was I. But in 1991, the Soviet Union broke. I say 91, Italy says 92. Anyway, December the 12th, they invited a team of professional boxers and kickboxers to Kiev to fight the Ukrainians. And at that time, I had Mark Longo, that was a light heavyweight world champion kickboxer from Denver. So we took a team of boxers up there, and the Klitschko's were already big names. Vitaly was still a young kid. Vitaly, you know, they were both, they had posters, giant posters on them. So I saw them there, never met them there. And when they came to start training in Las Vegas at Top Rank Gym, I introduced myself and I told them the story. And from there, that's how the connection became regenerated. And was with them for 12 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I know. You remember the Klitschko's, the heavyweight kings. So you remember him from the UFC days.
Yeah. Yep. I think you were with what? Cain Velasquez and.
Oh, I did them all, man. And the thing with the UFC is I worked with every fighter. You know, I was the primary cut man for them. Let me go back to square one. Is Dana White? I knew Dana before the gyms.
But you're not friends with him, damn it.
Well, yeah, with Dana. hey, I got.
We're not friends. We're business associates.
Yeah. Wait, let me tell you. Let's get into that. Dustin, you want to hear behind the scenes stuff?
Absolutely.
So what happened is I knew Dana before the gyms, right? And before the UFC, saw him in the gyms and all that. And, you know, in all fairness, let's be truthful, is he said he was in boxing, but I never really saw him work a fight, you know, or you know. So in that aspect, but nonetheless, he's the one. I was at a K1. Scott Coker was doing a show, and Bob Sapp was fighting Chemo.
Scott Coker of Bellator.
Yeah, Coker from Scott. I knew Scott Coker from the kickboxing days. My fighters used to fight under his card, so I've known Scott for many, many, many years. And
sure.
When he brought Bellator or K1 to Las Vegas, he called me to be the cut man. Anyway, Dana was there, and he asked me for my card and called the next day. He said, "Look, man, we bought the UFC, and would you like being interested in being a cut man with Leon Taps?"
Stitch, you were there from day one with the UFC?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, UFC 30. The first show was UFC 32. I think it was in Atlantic City, and but Leon Taps was the original cut man from UFC #1. And when then they brought him on board, but Dana was, got to give him credit. He was smart enough to realize that MMA was such a new sport where guys didn't know how to wrap fighters' hands, guys didn't know how to work cuts and all that. So he brought me in as a boxing experience. Same with Leon Taps. Leon Taps worked with Bernard Hopkins and a lot of other great fighters in the East Coast. So we got this program and we started working with them, and it got to the point where everybody wanted us to wrap their hands and couldn't do them all. So we brought in Don House and eventually Rudy Hernandez, and but this program that everybody uses in this pandemic now, like Top Rank and the bubbles and all that, Leon House and myself put that program together for the UFC, and now it's used worldwide.
Oh, wow.
So Dana, got to give him credit. He changed my life in both ways. Bringing me in and letting me go.
Sure. You remember that whole fiasco? That was about 7 years ago.
Which one?
Like
Where the UFC let Stitch go?
Mm-mm.
It was over the Reebok deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. When
Reebok
happened,
first came in.
Yeah, I was making. Well, everybody, fighters were making a lot of money on sponsors. 50, 100 grand a show.
Wow.
I was making money through sponsors. I was making more money through sponsors than what the UFC was paying us.
Sure.
Shocker.
For the most part, UFC was paying us garbage, and they knew it, But as Dana said, as we make money, you make money. When they make money, we didn't make money. Anyway, regardless, but I didn't complain because I was making money off the sponsors. Well, they got rid of the sponsors for all the fighters, and everybody's mad and complaining and arguing because Reebok was exclusive. Well, they met with the cutman and told us the same thing: this, you can't have no more sponsors. And I always try to represent everybody as the team leader, and I'd get them. If I got sponsors, I'd get them sponsors, right? But I tried to negotiate a raise in fees, and that didn't happen. So, at that point, I knew I couldn't continue working with them at that level. So they called me. Everybody's hating it. It's the biggest thing in MMA. And John Nash from Bloody Elbow calls, and he asked if I'd be interested in doing an interview on how the Reebok deal affected the cutmen, right? So I go back to my days of being a farm worker, the days of Cesar Chavez. My parents were in the movement of trying to unionize the farm workers for better conditions, working conditions and all that. So I thought about them. So the interview I did was very politically correct. it just went viral, went all over the world. I guess I just kind of fanned the fire and threw some gas in it while we're doing it. And I'm getting messages from fighters and even UFC staff members, and people all over the world. And finally, like a week later, I'm at Costco, and my wife and I are shopping, and my friend, we're all friends. They call me and they ask if I'd be interested or can we speak. I said no, and I knew what it was going to be about. I got home and they call me, and I'll tell you, is Mark Ratner's the one that called me with Jessica Gonzalez, and Mark's voice is cracking, and the only thing he said is, because of the interview you did about Reebok, the UFC is not going to use you no more. And I didn't want to bust on Mark, because Mark and I, we're all friends. Right. And so I told Mark, I said, that, okay, but do me a favor, you tell Dana, I said, he ain't got no balls, that he should have called me personally, since he's the one that brought me in. Mm-hmm. And then that's when, like a week later, they had their first big fight on Fox. And that's when Karen Bryant interviewed Dana. And what about Stitch? Is Stitch ever coming back? No, Stitch will never be back. And the whole scenario, Stitch and I were never friends. But man, I got a lot of love and a lot of support from people all over the world. They're still getting support.
Yeah. So the fighters that were calling you, Stitch, they were calling you to support you, and the staff.
Yes, everybody.
Oh, okay.
And I have nobody. Even the guy from Reebok called me, Amir. And, wow. And he's apologizing. It was the wrong thing. It's just that I guess because they were getting a lot of flack from the fans and from the media and definitely the fighters. And I just kind of fueled the fire. But I had to do what I had to do just to represent who I am.
Yep. And
then kind of represent the cutman also. But best thing ever happened, man. I've gotten jobs all over the world.
You sure have.
Now, and added to that, I've gotten a lot of great compliments. Wesley Snipes of the Creed movie comes up after and shakes my hand and says, "Hey, man, the UFC did you wrong." Hey, Wesley, nice meeting you. So Hollywood knew about it. But the best compliment I've gotten, Amir, is about 2 months ago, we were doing the top ranked shows in the bubble here at the MGM. Yeah. And Luis, which is a trainer for Anderson Silva and a lot of these top Brazilians, comes up to me because he's working with a Brazilian boxer that won a gold medal. And he comes up to me and he says, "Stitch, we, the coaches, the fighters, we thank you for speaking because we couldn't speak." And to me, that it gave me chills just repeating that. But that kind of dictated everything of what I did right.
So Stitch, you were the originator of the fighter pay revolution, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, yeah, still doing it. There was the thing about it, what's right is right. And the thing about it is, all these other major sports, baseball, football, basketball, they're all doing almost like a 50-50 split with the owners, right? Well, the UFC's at like an 18%.
Like 18. That's what I was telling you. Having this conversation.
That needs to be adjusted by all means, So now I was really just kind of protecting myself and the people that I was associated with. But like I say, maybe I just kind of fanned the fire a little bit.
Stitch, and you mentioned this and you touched on this, and if you allow me to even elaborate on this, is a lot of people don't know that I represent you and I've represented you in many deals. And after the UFC, the offers that come in for you, the demand that you have is amazing. It's amazing. Now you work with guys, the who's who of boxing. Andre Ward you worked with, the Klitschko's you worked with, and Tyson Fury you work with. So many of these world champions that you work with. So sometimes I think the lesson here is, and some of these things that you think are actually cutting your blessings are actually adding to your blessings, because at the end of the day, you did what you felt was right.
Yeah. No, and I feel, thank you. You're absolutely right. And yes, you do represent me as my agent. And for that, man, whenever you say something, how can I dispute it? Because you're always looking after me and other guys you work with. So for that, yeah, definitely. But no, you know what, Amir and Dustin, I always try to do the proper things, right? And if you do the proper things, good things come to your way and good things are happening. People come and I get offers, all kinds of offers.
Yep.
But as Amir knows is, we both look at it as a business aspect, as which is going to benefit us most. I turned down a tequila company because I didn't like their name. It was more of a negative connotation. Plus, the girls that they had as models looked like somebody they pulled out of a bar in TJ. You know, so you know that's not the image that I wanted to represent.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
No, and listen, by the way, there's a lot to be said about that, is you can't buy a man's integrity, his brand, his image. There was a very high-profile athlete that I represent yesterday, and he had I don't want to say the name of the company, but it was a company that just didn't represent him the right way, and it was a 7-figure deal, and he walked away from it. Badu Jack, a Muslim, in a different deal. Had a company that was, in an industry that he couldn't represent, and he wouldn't represent, and he didn't even ask about the number. The first thing he said is, is this permissible for me as a Muslim? And I said, it's not, but I have to bring it to you anyway as your agent. And he says, I won't do it. I don't care what the money is. I don't even want to hear about it.
Yeah, it's not.
Those are the reputable guys we love working with.
Yeah, and then like Tyson Fury. I know the first time I worked with him, and I said, I work with sponsors, and do you mind if I make an outfit, my cornerman jacket, to match your colors, and wear my sponsors? He put his hand on my shoulder. He said, Stitch, you can do whatever you want, just no alcohol, drugs, and firearm. So I got to respect him for that. And just like Badu, you got to respect him for that, because other offers will come if you continue doing what you're doing.
Oh, you're 100% right. You also had a couple of YouTube fighters.
Yeah. Thanks to you. Hey.
Thanks to Johnny.
You know what? I was talking about that last night. I've been real blessed to work with so many different levels of fighting, of all combat sports, but working with YouTubers like KSI and Gid, Anson Gid was, it was a different world, but, it kind of felt like in the movies, these guys come into our world. And like I told KSI is, you're not whatever you are, you're not a rapper or anything here, you're a fighter. And someone like Anson Gibb, that when I first saw him, the guy didn't know who I was. So I thought, okay,
right.
Well, this guy's from a different world, but man, I got so much respect for him just for the heart and soul that he put out for not being an athlete, not being a fighter. But,
let's talk about those two fights for a second, if you don't mind. The KSI fight, there was a day that you, quote unquote, knighted JJ.
Yeah.
Tell us that day.
Yeah, and it was funny because I would sit there with JJ and like Michael B. Jordan. This was really, it parallels each other, right, from Creed, the Creed movies. But I would wrap Michael's hands just like I did KSI, and I would be consejos. I would give him the advice, and I would kind of put him in the mental stage of what fighters are like, right, and what you have to do. And the story of Mike Tyson, when he said, take the pain, you got to take the pain. I'm relaying all this information to him so he could accept the battles that he's going to go into. And he was a tough warrior. And I think up about the, end of the training, I said, I'm wrapping his hands. I said, look, man, you're making us proud. You definitely made that transition. You're a fighter. I'm going to knight you as a fighter. And I did, So, and he deserved it. He did great, man.
He did. And if you remember, Stitch, I mean, that was a grueling camp. And he took himself off of social media. He took himself off of his, all the stuff that made him what he is, and he dedicated fight to boxing. He's dedicated himself to boxing.
Yeah. And I remember, the negative part of it is when it was a positive thing, and I got to give Vidal Riley credit as a young guy. He was probably one of the best coaches I've seen coach fighters. But when he slapped the shit out of him, and he got him back on track, right? But that sometimes you just got to change the course of where they're going to get them back on track. But he took it. He took the negativity and turned it into a positivity. And so credit to both those.
Now, there was a lot of talk and there was a lot of rumors and gossip around, and you and I have not had any conversation about this podcast or about the question that I'm going to ask you right now, and I'll let you answer honestly. You were there during the sparring session when we brought in a true boxer, a guy that's been in the gym for a long time, and we put JJ up against him.
Yeah. Good.
Was that or was that not staged?
No, it was staged. No, it's when he dropped him.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I tell you, man, the kid could fight, and give him credit, but I remember that. And the guy was so bad. I think his wife was with him, huh?
Yeah. He's a nice kid too. And
Yeah,
listen,
super nice guy.
yeah. Mind you, I think that had he known that it was going to go as viral as it did, and we didn't tag him, we didn't put anything in. I think he ended up sharing it on his social media, and that's why it ended up blowing up the way it is, and people identified who he was. But no, the kid made a transition. JJ KSI came in, and he went from a YouTuber to a legitimate fighter. And the kid could pop. The kid can box.
Yeah, it was definitely, and I knew it was different. Here's when I really knew it was different, is when we flew from Las Vegas to Los Angeles in a private jet. I think it was 7 of us or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they put us up in this hotel in Beverly Hills, where I walk in my room and my initials are embroidered in my pillowcases. Right?
I tell everybody that story.
Oh yeah, it felt like the movie Pretty Woman when those the ushers with the white hats are walking the people's dogs. I think I saw a couple of those. And the chef, the car they gave us were the BMW that the chef had was out of this world, and yeah, that's when I knew it was a different world. But when I knew it was different is when we walk in the dressing room, Dustin. First thing we do, we put our bags away, and then the team will go to ringside to examine the ring, the red corner, whatever corner we're going to be in, red or blue. And then what's your position? So we look at the layout, but I knew it was a different world when everybody knew who Vidal Riley was, the fans, and Leon, and they didn't even know who I was. So these were the YouTube fans that were there at the fights.
You know what's crazy? Badu Jack, after winning his second world title, and he was defending, going for a third world title. Mind you, he should have had 5 world titles. But the comments in the YouTube were, "Isn't that the guy that walked out with KSI?" I'm like, no, that's the 2-division world champion who's pound for pound probably the best fighter in our era. What do you mean the guy that walked out with KSI? But Stitch, you're right. It's a different world.
Different audience.
And you know how I actually came upon KSI was Johnny. Johnny said, "I got this kid KSI that wants to come out. He wants to start boxing. What do you think about you guys working with him?" I was like, "Man, what the hell is a KSI?" And he goes, "No, that's his name."
You mean KPI?
Yeah, right. We're talking about, and he made the deal with the guys. They came out the following week and they worked with Floyd Sr. They sparred with Badu, and that's how I met Vidal, and really that's what it was. But it took a generation like Johnny's to introduce me, because I would have had nothing to do with it, and I would have mocked it and joked about it and hated it, as a lot of these guys do, because they're not a part of it. But now you got the rise of Jake Paul and what he's doing. I mean, this is one of the highest paid fighters in boxing and in MMA today.
I think what it did the most, like boxing would be in the mainstream handful of times out of the year. Now it's in the mainstream once a month almost. I feel like with these YouTube guys, so it definitely served a purpose.
It absolutely did.
It has. People have asked me through interviews. I've been doing a lot of them, leading up to the fight that we just had. But they asked me, "What do you think about these YouTube fights?" And I think, for let's KSI and Logan Paul, the first one, to me, it made so much sense for DAZN,
right?
Because they work on a subscription base, and I didn't know people had 20 million followers.
Right?
These guys have like 20 million followers each. But if you get a small number of these followers that would tune in to watch Logan Paul and the KSI fight, you got a whole bunch of people logging on. So on the business aspect of it made a lot of sense.
It made a ton of sense. And mind you, a lot of people don't know, I called Liam and I said, "Liam, I would love to promote this fight." And he's like, "We really don't need you. Like, we already have the eyeballs. What are you going to do?" And I'm like, because usually a promoter, what he does is he sells the fight.
Right.
They sell the fight. They try to get eyeballs. Between the two of them, they got 40 million eyeballs on them. They don't need me.
Yeah.
And it's true, they don't. And they did a phenomenal job, and and he's behind the scenes a lot. He doesn't get enough credit. But Liam from OP Talent really did a phenomenal job putting that whole thing together. And really, JJ's whole rise on this. They did great. Anderson Gibb, a little bit different of a story. The outcome wasn't really what we wanted it to be. But what an amazing training camp he had.
Yeah, to me, it's somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, right? And like say it's the characters, but when I saw Anson come, number one, his nose is no bigger than the regular boxers, right? And I look at him, he just doesn't look like an athlete.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to him, and he knows zero about boxing, but he made that transition. And if you remember, you were yelling as he was sparring the last couple of days of sparring. He looked like Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
So it was just the nerves, and Jake Paul's an athlete.
Right.
give this guy credit. He's an athlete. He was a
knocked out
wrestler
UFC
before,
fighter.
so his caliber of athleticism was different than Anson Gibb, but he showed a lot of heart, and for that, I got to give him all the respect in the world.
Yeah, we're going to get wrapped up here, Stitch. I know you've got some engagements you got to get to, but let's talk about Jake Paul, because he is right now, whether people want to admit it or not, if not the face of combat sports, one of the few faces. You can throw him up there with Conor McGregor. You can throw him up there with, who just recently retired, Manny Pacquiao, because he does command that presence. He's a content creator, so he knows how to keep himself relevant. He's got a great team of guys behind him, BJ Flores, J. Leon Love, and everybody that's, around him that knows boxing. Nikisa, who's, was big in the UFC also. He's got the right team around him. The kid can market himself. He can promote himself. And the kid can fight. The kid can legitimately fight.
I mean, he knocked a former, one champion or Bellator champion clean out. Ben Askren.
Askren, yeah.
I don't care if he's a striker or
Yeah,
not.
but and the thing with, I knew that Jake was tough because he was a wrestler, and wrestlers are good athletes that make a good transition. Because when I had my school of kickboxing, guys that came from wrestling made good kickboxers because they're used to all that. But for being a nice guy, let me give you a behind the scenes story. Is my grandkids, one was 5 and the other one was 7. It was Ava's birthday, and Bones Adams told me that KSI or that Jake Paul was training at Bones' gym. So I asked Bones, because they're big fans of his. I mean, these kids they're kids, but they're fans of Jake Paul. I asked if I could bring them by and surprise them, and Jake says sure. So we drive into Bones Adams' gym, and there's a big old van that comes up. These kids knew the license plate. They knew it was Jake Paul.
Oh my God!
They got so excited, man. And Jake came out of the van and was talking to them like they're best of friends and wishing Ava a happy birthday.
That's awesome.
They took pictures. So that's, he's a giving guy, and I got a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, he knows how to turn it on for the camera, and he does, the right things off the camera. He's genuinely, he is a good guy. And I trust Jay Leon, wholeheartedly. That's a brother of mine, and I hear a lot of things that go on there, but not that I'm privy to everything, but from what I do hear, he is a tremendous guy. And he's good for the sport. At the end of the day, he's good for the sport. I don't care what anybody says. He's good for the sport.
It's a small world. The Pauls are from Cleveland, Ohio.
When Nancy fought in Miami, Amir and Dustin, Jake and Logan's father, we were outside the hotel, and he asked for my card, about working with his sons.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd love to, but first, if they're fighting these guys, I got to work with these guys.
Right.
But it was nice for him to think about me, taking care of their son and his son.
And you bring up, and on one of the final notes, you bring up, the audience base and how young they are. Jeff Mayweather, who I also represent, was, he used to tell me, man, these internet guys, man, they're trolling me, and man, he goes, I hate these people. I just block people. I probably block 20 people a day, and I get rid of them, and I this and I that. And I'm like, Jeff, they're children. These aren't like you. Somebody talks to you like, hey man, you suck. You're gonna punch him in his face. Mike Tyson said it perfect. Social media has given people a platform to say things to you that they would never say in the face and to your face and get punched in the mouth for it. So these kids, they get out and they grow up like that, saying, man, you stink, you suck, you this. So Jeff's like, man, I'm blocking them. So I'm like, Jeff, they're children. And he couldn't grasp it because he comes from a pedigree of, Floyd Jr., Floyd Sr., Roger, like real fighters, like real men talking. So we were at the Staples Center and we're walking into the locker room, and one of the kids goes, you suck, Jeff. So I go, Jeff, stop. I go, Jeff, look. That's the guy. He's like 12 years old, maybe. I go, those are the guys that are talking. And then you see how they're hiding behind the thing? And he looked at me, he just nodded. He said, man, this is a whole different world for me. So it definitely is a different demographic. But,
it is.
Yeah. Stitch, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know you're busy. You got a ton of things going on. We're big fans of you, always big fans of you. And we can't wait. Creed 3, is it happening or not?
Yeah, well, I'm going to call Nicholas Stern after I get off from with you and see what he says. But I think it's on, man. And let me tell you before we go, and you guys, Dustin and Amir, you guys, thanks for having me on. But this goes way back to Creed 2 when I'm in the dressing room rapping Michael B. Jordan, and I'm telling him how proud I am of him, what he's done, and Tessa and Ryan Coogler, who wrote and directed Creed, and Stephen Caple, the director. And I just tell him how proud I am. He says, Stitch, we went from being actors to writers, producers, and directors. And he looks at me like this. He says, I'm directing Creed 3, and you're with me as long as you want.
Wow.
That's great.
Wow. And listen, to your credit, and which they can acknowledge, and I'm sure a lot of people can, you are the face of Cutman, which I do have to give a cheap plug to. Stitch Duran will be the first Cutman in the new boxing game, ES Boxing Series coming up. That'll be hopefully released this fall, this winter. And Stitch is going to be in the video game also. So you're going to have a video character also, Stitch. That'll be good.
Yeah, that's good. These are all little moments that are fun. And, of course, economics play a part, but that's not the reason why you do it, right?
Right.
You do it because you enjoy it. And like me, for me, it's a challenge. And I've been offered these opportunities. And I always go back and think of that little kid that grew up as a farm worker. So I've come from here. I've gone up there. So I'm very proud of what I've accomplished.
You're the definition of the American dream, Stitch. You're the definition of what righteousness, integrity, and honor are. And I'm proud to work with you and stand beside you. And we're very proud to have you on this podcast also. So thank you very much for all you do. And we're going to be signing off here. Episode 10. Any parting thoughts, OG?
No, thank you so much for making time to get on here. And, yeah, good luck in the future.
Right. Let's do it again, man, because I got a lot of stories. And
I love it.
Don't twist my arm.
He wants to talk some behind-the-scene UFC stuff.
Oh, we'd love to. That's a whole different conversation. When you're not so busy, we're going to have a long
go for hours.
Oh, yeah. So we'll make sure.
Let's do it again.
Open invite all the time. Signing off. Episode 10. My team, my family, my OSB. We're signing off.